In the early years of the 12th century, when England was still trembling under the weight of Norman rule, a queen emerged from the mists of the old Saxon bloodline, a woman who would heal the wounds left by conquest and crown a dynasty with both ancient and holy legitimacy. Her name was Matilda of Scotland, though she had once been known simply as Edith, daughter of the royal house of Wessex and granddaughter of kings. She was born around 1080 in the cloistered sanctity of Dunfermline Abbey in Scotland. Her parents, King Malcolm III Canmore of Scotland and Queen Margaret of Wessex, were a union of northern strength and southern sanctity. Her mother, the sainted Margaret, descended from the line of Alfred the Great, was famed for her piety and reform, while her father, Malcolm, was the hard-edged warrior who had seized the Scottish crown from Macbeth himself. Thus, from her cradle, Edith, later Matilda, carried both the sword and the psalter in her blood. Raised within the abbeys of Romsey and Wilton, young Edith's education was entrusted to the Church. There she was taught to read Latin, sing sacred hymns, and weave the silken arts of diplomacy and intellect. Her aunt Christina was abbess of Romsey and ruled her house with an iron devotion to the cloistered life. Edith was compelled to wear a veil and live like a novice nun, though she never took the vows. This period would later haunt her. The veil meant as protection for a royal girl in an age of predators would become the source of great controversy. For when she reached womanhood, her beauty was widely known, and whispers of her grace reached the courts of England and Normandy alike. Yet when she was sought as a bride, enemies of her rising star claimed she was bound to God, that she had taken the veil and could not wed. It was not true, and Edith, intelligent, poised, and quietly defiant, would prove it before kings. After the Norman conquest of 1066, the English throne was a foreign one. The Saxon nobility had been crushed or exiled, their bloodlines scattered. When Henry I, youngest son of William the Conqueror, took the throne in 1100 following his brother William Rufus's death in the New Forest, he faced a divided realm. The Normans were restless, the Saxons still bitter. Henry, pragmatic and cunning, saw what no one else dared. The union of these rival peoples could be achieved not through the sword, but through marriage. He turned his gaze north to Edith of Scotland, the last true-born descendant of the old English royal line. When Edith arrived in England for her betrothal, the question of her veil resurfaced. Had she been a nun? Could the King of England marry a consecrated woman? The matter went before Anselm, Archbishop of Canterbury, one of the most learned and principled men of his age. Edith stood before him, not meekly, not with tears, but with fire in her eyes, and declared that she had never taken the vows. The veil, she said, was placed upon her against her will, for her own safety, not as a sign of holy marriage to Christ. Her testimony moved Anselm. He believed her, and the path was cleared. In 1100, Henry and Edith were wed in Westminster Abbey. At her coronation, she took the name Matilda, perhaps to distance herself from the monastic shadow of her youth, perhaps to echo the Norman queens before her. But to the English people, she was always Edith the Good, a Saxon princess crowned queen of a Norman realm. Queen Matilda's court became a sanctuary of learning and refinement. Fluent in Latin, conversant in theology and philosophy, she corresponded with scholars and abbots across Christendom. Her palace was said to echo with music, poetry, and the debates of learned men, but her role was more than ornamental. She was the visible link between the old and the new, between the conquered and the conquerors. For the first time since Hastings, the English began to see themselves reflected in their queen. Her blood was theirs, her mother had been their saint, and in the quiet rooms of Westminster, Matilda worked tirelessly to mend the fractures of her husband's kingdom. She intervened in disputes between barons and churchmen. She endowed abbeys and schools. She sponsored the construction of Westminster Hall and a network of hospitals, including the St. Giles Hospital for lepers, one of the earliest in England. Her piety was matched by pragmatism. Matilda knew that her husband's legitimacy depended as much on the perception of mercy as the exercise of might, and through her gentle diplomacy, Henry's image as the Lion of Justice was softened and sanctified. Matilda bore Henry 2 surviving children. Matilda, who would one day become Empress of the Holy Roman Empire, and William Adelin, the bright young heir to the English throne. It was through her daughter that the blood of both Alfred the Great and William the Conqueror would flow into the future dynasties of Europe. Her children were raised in the aura of intellect and authority she cultivated. The young Princess Matilda, who would one day contend for the English crown against Stephen of Blois, was shaped in her mother's image, learned, formidable, proud, and utterly convinced of her divine right to rule. Unlike many Norman royals, Queen Matilda was beloved by her subjects. She walked among them, granting alms, tending to the poor, and visiting monasteries without pomp. Her humility astonished the chroniclers of her day. William of Malmesbury wrote that she was the common refuge of all who were in distress, while Lord Derek Vitalis described her as a second Saint Margaret. Indeed, she consciously emulated her mother's charity and devotion. She washed the feet of the poor in Holy Week, distributed food, and ensured that widows and orphans were provided for. When Henry was away on campaign, she ruled as regent a queen in full authority. Her regency in 1104 to 1105, while Henry dealt with rebellion in Normandy, demonstrated her political acumen. Her rule was stable, her judgments wise, and her governance praised. Even in an age when women's power was constrained by the church and tradition, Matilda wielded hers with grace and steel. In the later years of her life, Matilda's health waned. The rigors of court and the sorrows of distance from her children wore heavily upon her spirit. Her son William was sent to Normandy to prepare for his future rule. Her daughter to Germany to marry Emperor Henry V. Matilda herself devoted her final years to pious works, retreating ever more frequently to her beloved monasteries. On May 1st, 1118, at the age of 38, Queen Matilda of England died at Westminster Palace. Her body was carried to Westminster Abbey, where she was laid to rest near Edward the Confessor, her ancestor and spiritual ideal. Her epitaph, written in Latin, praised her as a rose of the English, a queen who united the houses of Saxon and Norman, the last princess of one age and the first true matriarch of another. Though her reign was short, Matilda's influence echoed for centuries. Through her daughter, the Empress Matilda, her blood flowed into the Plantagenets and beyond. Every English monarch from Henry II to Elizabeth II could trace descent from her veins, a lineage uniting conquerors and the conquered saints and soldiers. But beyond lineage, her true legacy was moral. She had redefined queenship, not as a position of idle grace, but as a sacred office of healing, learning, and moral authority. In the age of the sword, Matilda of Scotland wielded faith, intellect, and compassion as her weapons. She was the bridge that bound England's past to its future, the queen who made peace with history itself.